Hi, I'm Di with Sister Chicks Quilting. Welcome to my channel today. I appreciate you tuning in. And I'm standing here in front of my fat quarter baskets, minus my gray ones, because it's a color wheel. And we're going to talk about color really quick. Now you guys know the primary colors. They're red, yellow, and blue. And every other color is made from that. I'm sure you learned that in elementary school. But I'm going to talk about 3 different types of quilts, or in 3 color groups that you can make your quilts. And I'm going to show you an example of each quilt. Let's talk about analogous color first. Analogous is, say you have an aqua quilt is your main color, and you add green, maybe a little lemongrass, and blue, maybe a little purple, but you add all the colors that are around it. An analogous quilt, if you're using analogous colors, your quilt is very visually appealing. It just flows, it's pretty. And of course you can use values in those. For instance, let's take a look. I don't know if I can do this or not, but this would be an analogous quilt. Just showing you the insides, all of those colors together. Okay, so this is the quilt that she brought in. And this is a complementary quilt. She's got all these little strips. They're like 1-inch strips pieced in, and then she's cut them into triangles and done HSTs and then put them together to make interest. But she said as she was going along, I think this is the one right here. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. She put this one in. She was just going to do with blue and browns, and she thought that's just too boring. And she had this one, she saw some red in it. So that caused her to put this orange in it. Really, it's orange. This is brown with an orange. And then she put this orange in it. And the orange and the blue play off of each other. And guess what she's done for a back? So that's her complementary color scheme. Take a look at this. Isn't that bright and bold? But it works, and it's quite beautiful. And it's going to be a gorgeous quilt with the blues and the oranges in this complementary color scheme. Ta-da! It is all sewn together except for 2 rows that I'm going to show you how I did it. And you're going to love it. It is so simple dimple, I'm telling you. This has been the fastest, easiest quilt ever. It's monochromatic, so every block in it is blue. And they pull from one or the other somehow. It's wonderful how you can pull colors, and it looks really, really good. When you make a monochromatic quilt or use a monochromatic color scheme, guess what? It makes it peaceful. Isn't this a great way to have a baby quilt? Nice and peaceful. You want that little tyke to feel comforted. Now, because of that, I chose to use the same background fabric. Let me tell you, I just used 8 different fat quarters, and I cut 6 by 6 inch squares off them, and I did 6 inch squares because they were 18 inches wide. And I could have done low volume and made it really scrappy, but you know what? I really wanted that peaceful feeling. Here is my background fabric. It is a low volume. It's light gray with little white X's on it, or crosses, and I thought it looked really neat. I think it looks awesome on this quilt. And all I did was make half square triangles and put the quilt together in groups of 4. 4 half square triangles, all going the same way. Don't you think that kind of speaks peace? And this is just going to be the most gorgeous baby quilt. Let me show you how I finished it. Well, actually, let me show you how I put it together. Now, this is exactly what you're going to need to make this quilt. It's got 40 blocks in it. Actually, it has 80 blocks in it. But I cut 40 assorted blue 6-inch squares. I cut, out of my 1 yard of background, I cut 40 6-inch squares, and I sewed them into half square triangles. So this time, because I was working with 6 inches, I went ahead and drew a line from corner to corner, as you can see right here on my light background. And then you sew right at the 1/4 inch from that line on both sides. Then you cut it right in half, right on the line, like so. And this is where I use my Quilt in a Day half square triangle ruler. I'm going to line up this on the 5.5 inch square line. So I have that seam I've just sewn right on this 5.5 inch line, just like so, and then I trim it. I trimmed up every one of my half square triangles that way. They all are exactly the same. And because of that, I was able to put this together so easy. Let me show you a few construction tips. I have just picked up the last row, and you know what's wonderful about this quilt? You don't have to match anything, just your corners. So I'm going to match my corners very good and stitch it down at 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to use my pin method so I can get the correct pattern pieces together. So here's a white pin and here's a blue pin. I'm looking for either a white, okay, here's a white pin. We'll put that one together with that piece. And here's a blue pin. So I match my pins like this, and I'm going to have them in the correct position on the quilt. Now, to make sure this row is stitched together correctly, I'm going to match the last 2 pins, the yellow pins. And just like that, I have a row stitched, the very last row. So I'm going to sew this together with this row and attach it to the quilt. Okay, here are the 2 bottom rows sewn together. And you can see I've got my groups of 4. I'm going to go ahead and press this and sew them onto the finished quilt and show you this finished quilt. I have that last row pinned onto the quilt, and I nested the seams as I went along, and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it together. Finished quilt. Let me press it. Okay, what do you think? Isn't that adorable? I just think it's so cute. It's fresh, it's modern, and you know what? It's very soothing and calming. I think this new little baby boy is going to love their baby quilt. And it was so easy. It probably took me just a little under 3 hours to do, which is pretty dang fast. That includes squaring up my half square triangles. Now the method I use, or the ruler I use, is the Quilt in a Day half square triangle ruler. I love, 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 love that ruler. Because of that, and because they were all squared up to 5.5 inches, this literally went together in a whiz. And it just made it so easy. Another thing that made it easy is how I place the triangles. You really don't have a lot of triangles. This is where you nested the seams on this row right here. And you don't really have to match anything. Look at those beautiful points. Squaring up, using a 6-inch block. This just is the perfect quilt. So to recap, there's 80 blocks. I had 40 squares of the background, 40 squares of the blue, and that made 80 half square triangles. The quilt is, anyway, it's a perfect size baby quilt. Next week, I'm gonna be in McCall, Idaho. Woo! It's gonna be a party, guys. I'm so excited. I have 3 projects I'm taking that I plan on getting finished, and we are just gonna sew. If you haven't been to McCall, Idaho, it's beautiful. There's gonna be deer, there's pine trees. It's just a gorgeous setting. I can't wait to go, and guess what I'm going to do? Yep, I'm going to film it for you so you guys can go along with me. And that's what my video next week is going to be, is my quilt retreat. Again, what really happens at Sister Chicks quilting retreats. We do get a little crazy. So, thanks for tuning in. Can't wait to see you next week. If you like what you see, I'd love it if you would subscribe and or give me a thumbs up. I love your comments. Keep them coming. Bye. See you next week.